Hi, everybody. Welcome to Phil and Dave's Excellent Adventures. Just Dave here. Today I'm talking about the movie Evil Dead Rise. This is going to be a spoiler review, so if you've not seen the movie yet and you're concerned about spoilers, I would suggest you go and watch the movie first before you watch this review. So, Evil Dead Rise is the newest movie, the fifth, I suppose, in the overall Evil Dead franchise. Another sort of reboot. This one takes place in California, I believe, in a high-rise apartment building. Sister shows up, deadites, Necronomicon, the whole deal. So as far as what I liked about the movie, I thought the cast was pretty good. I like Alyssa Sutherland as the mom character. She's on the shows Vikings and The Mist. I haven't watched those, but I've heard they're good. And I liked Lily Sullivan as her sister as well. I thought the rest of the cast was mostly okay. I thought the makeup was pretty good, especially on Alyssa Sutherland's character. You see her in a lot of the posters and the promotional stuff. And good, very effective and very creepy. I chose to go with this fan-made poster instead, just because I like this one better. But yeah, it's a cool, creepy image. I like the references to the previous films, they Dead by Dawn, I'll Swallow Your Soul, Come Get Some of that kind of stuff. That was cool. I like that. Some of the humor worked pretty well for me. I kind of like the dirtbag, like Kids Next Door in small doses. And I really like the line when she first shows up the sister and she goes, "Oh, you look tired. You look like mom." For some reason, that was just really funny to me because it just sounds like something a sister would say to another sister. And something that maybe most sisters wouldn't like to hear, depending, I guess, on what they think of their mom. And I did really like the ending. The thing with the wood chipper especially was cool. And of course, to see a chainsaw is always cool in an Evil Dead movie. But yeah, I like the wood chipper scene. Well, I like the idea of it at least. And the kind of combination monster was okay. And I really like the practical effects in this. Where they had practical effects, I thought they were good, and they worked for me. And I always love to see practical effects. As far as what I disliked about this movie, didn't really love the opening. It kind of opens with these kids in a cabin or on a lake, which I'm like, okay, that makes sense, sort of. And then they flash back to one day before, something like that. And I've always complained about it before. I don't really like non-linear stuff. Just tell the story. I mean, sometimes you need to do it for a reason, but in this case, anything really added much other than explain why the people at the lake were freaking out, but I don't know. Part of the issue I had with this movie, I think, was the fact that most of the cast seemed to be Australian or British or New Zealand. So a lot of them had just, weird accents where they'd be talking and all of a sudden they'd say a word a little weird. And you're like, what? Oh, no, they must be Australian. Like, okay, what's going on? I don't know why, for some reason, the American accent seems to be hard for some people. And me as an American, of course, I'm sensitive to it. So maybe for other Australians, they're like, hey, that's fine. Or I think the director of this is Irish. And they filmed in New Zealand. So it also makes sense they were getting people from Australia and New Zealand. But yeah, there were just several times where I'm just like, wait, so is everybody in this movie Australian? But what is going on? It reminded me of the old movie April Fool's Day from the 80s, which was set in America but filmed in England. And everyone's got these weird American accents that they do. And they were kind of doing that in this room. It was a little distracting for me where I'm just like, so they're all Australian? All right. I didn't like the kids. I try to, well, I feel bad when I criticize kid actors, so I don't want to focus on the performance. And the performances weren't bad, honestly. They were fine. I don't like kids. Not in a horror movie. In a kids movie, sure. In a family movie, fine. But in a horror movie, I want to see 30-year-olds playing teenagers is what I want to see. I don't know. I want to see drinking and doing drugs and having sex and like adult stuff, not like kids, doing kid stuff. And I guess they're in their 20s, or the actors are at least. So I don't know how old the characters are, but I don't know, kids. I didn't like the Staphany, especially because I think Stabatha is a way better name. I didn't like the look of the Necronomicon itself. I thought it looked terrible. I don't understand how the Necronomicon in this looks worse than the one in the original 1981, I think. Evil Dead, whatever year that first one came out. I did not like the look of the actual book itself, or apparently it's called the Naturum Demonto. So I guess I didn't know as much about Evil Dead as I thought, but I didn't like the look of it. I didn't like the outside. I didn't like the inside either. The designs on there just didn't really work for me. I like the sound mixing in this. Now, maybe it was because we did see it in like an IMAX theater, and so they I don't know. You pay extra so they crank up the sound louder. I don't really know how it works, but it was too much for me. Where I'm just like, oh my god, calm down. Like the opening with the music and everything, I'm just like, Jesus, like let's dial it back here a little bit, guys. I don't need to be having PTSD flashbacks in the middle of the theater. I thought that the first half of the movie, especially, was really pretty boring. I didn't care about the characters much. I didn't. They didn't give us much to go on other than like, oh, one's a single mom, the other girl's a guitar tech who's pregnant. I'm like, I don't know. The whole pregnancy thing didn't really work for me either. I hate to say it, but I'm a guy, so like I just, I get it, I understand. Pregnancy is a beautiful miracle or whatever, but like it did seem kind of manipulative to me to just be like, oh, she's pregnant too, and just like also I don't know, it didn't resonate with me as much because I'm a sexist misogynist, I guess. But like I don't know, I didn't need it there. I didn't understand why it was set in a high rise if they didn't do anything with the fact that it was set in a high rise. Like when I first heard the concept, I'm like, oh, Evil Dead Rise, set in a high rise. I get it. I see what you did there. All right, cool. Like Demons 2. I like Demons 2. Like, yeah, okay, let's do that, man. He had it going through like Dread or The Raid. It's like going through level by level and like taking people on and like, yeah, okay, dude, that's cool. I'm into that. That's not what we got though. We got just a basic kind of exorcism type movie in a lot of ways. I didn't like the digital effects. There's a fair amount of digital effects in this, and whenever they showed up, it really bothered me. There's a part where like a severed head is sort of set down and blood seeps out of it, and at least to me, it looked like a digital effect. It looked like a bad digital effect. For all I know, I'll find out later it's actually practical, and I'm stupid. But yeah, when I saw it, I'm just like, that looked fake. I didn't like that. There's a part where someone eats glass, and the glass starts poking out through their neck. Cool visual, cool idea. But again, since it was done with digital effects as opposed to practical effects, it just didn't work for me because it wasn't real. And I even feel like sometimes I want to make the argument that using practical effects actually gets a better performance out of the actors too, because they're actually responding to something they can actually see and not just green screen or whatever it is. And they probably do have something practical in there for them to respond to, but I don't know. I didn't like that, and I really didn't like. There's this one scene that people have talked about. It's fun enough where somebody bites off an eyeball and like spits it in someone else's mouth. Cool, fun idea, very in line with the Evil Dead type stuff. But again, it was just a cheap digital shot, and it looked bad to me. It looked like something you'd see in a 2000s movie, like that one with James McAvoy where he's like curving bullets or something. I don't know. It just looked stupid and cheesy. And I thought it was a fun idea. And if they would have shot it differently, if they would have shot it farther back and you could have actually seen, it coming out from the mouth and into the other person's mouth, it wouldn't have looked as bad. You could have almost said like, oh, maybe that was real. But in this case, it was just a very obvious digital shot because it was shot from the perspective of the eyeball, sort of, or the perspective of the mouth that the eyeball came out. Either way, I just didn't like it. There was a lot of these, it just seemed like missed opportunities to me. In a lot of ways too, this movie just felt kind of like a kid's movie to me, especially at the beginning. At some point, I'm like, is this PG-13? Now, it does get very bloody toward the end, and so I'll give them credit. And they used real blood. At least at one point, they poured blood all over that one kid. So hey, good job there. Pour blood on more kids, movie makers, but only for movies, not for any other reason. But in some ways, it felt like a kid's movie to me. It just, especially, I think the sort of taunting that the mother was doing, where she's like, "Oh, you titty sucking baby." It seemed like her insults were just so tame compared to like The Exorcist, which came out 50 years ago. And so for me, the bar is like, your mother sucks cocks in hell, and if you can't beat that, then, especially in 2023, the best you can come up with is just like silly schoolyard insults. Like it did not work for me. Everybody in the movie's dumb, which I know what happens, and people are dumb in real life, but it always upsets me in horror movies because I know you got to have the story, you got to have it progress. So you got to have the dumb kid pull out the record and play it. Now, why that kid would have to be into records seems a little suspicious. I'm sure there's kids that age into records, but whatever. And why those people would record that is also whatever, but fine, I get that for the plot. But then like later parts where like she sees there's clearly something wrong with her sister, and I guess it's her sister, and I guess people in horror movies don't realize they're in horror movies. But for me, I feel like if I was in that situation, I'm at my sister's house, she's acting weird, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna take your kids and we're gonna head out for a while. I'm gonna call the cops and have them check up on you. But again, I know I'm watching a horror movie, so maybe that's not fair to them to say, but I just felt like in a lot of ways people made bad choices and acted dumb, and that always kind of irritates me. And I think my biggest criticism for this is that it felt like a pastiche of just better films, just like The Exorcist or The Shining. They do the blood coming out of the elevator doors just like in The Shining, which I'm like, cool, I guess maybe that's an homage, but you also just kind of ripped it off. Like, couldn't you have done something different or some kind of a twist on it? But no. So yeah, that Demons, the wood chipper, again, cool idea, good visual, kind of. But I mean, that's Fargo, and so that's, I think, again, I guess really my biggest issue is just the direction overall. Just some of the choices made for the way that it was shot specifically, I didn't like. Again, the wood chipper scene, cool idea. Some of it was good, and there was some practical stuff in there that was good, and I liked that a lot. But then, like, there's a part where he just like shoots it from overhead, and it just really bothered me. I'm like, why? That's the least interesting way to shoot this. You could have shot it from underneath. You could have shot it from the side, which he did. But like, I don't know, for whatever reason, just that overhead shot just really irritated me. Or I'm like, this is the least interesting way to shoot this for me. And like I said, the eyeball scene, there's a couple other ones. Just I really did not like the choices that the director made for how to do it, I guess. So yeah, speaking of the director, other than that, this is directed by a guy named, I think it's a guy named Lee Cronin. As far as I know, they've got one other movie called The Hole in the Ground. I haven't seen it. I've heard of it. I've heard good things, I think. They also did a segment in one of those horror anthology movies, which is, I think, probably where they met Sam Raimi. Sounds like, I think I read that somewhere. But yeah, he also wrote it, which I do think is interesting. Especially in horror movies, it's rare to see one person, one single writer, especially the writer himself directing. Maybe it's not as rare as I think it is. Now that I think about it, James Wan and other people do it. But I feel like, the Scream, I think, movie had a bunch of writers on it from what I remember. And so yeah, just seeing that it was one person, one unique voice, that's cool. I didn't particularly like vibe with the voice, but it's there. I do think in some ways too, the movie, it's about women, it's about sisters, one of the characters pregnant. So a lot of that stuff probably resonates a little more with women than it does with me. Again, I mean, just trying to be honest here. I realize I sound like a terrible person, but like, I mean, Ash was in the other ones. I like Ash, and of course they're never going to get someone to replace Bruce Campbell, but I don't know. But then they kind of tried, and like, why? Anyway, the movie was filmed in New Zealand, which is why almost everyone in it is either Australian or from New Zealand. It was shot in chronological order for some reason. So that's cool. I think that makes sense for a horror movie in some ways, to kind of build up the suspense and to add to it. And so, yeah, I can see how that works for the actors and can work for the movie. It was supposed to originally go to HBO Max, but due to positive test audience screenings, they decided to put it out in theaters, which was a good idea. There is a Bruce Campbell cameo. I didn't actually catch it until someone else, till I read it somewhere. But he's one of the recordings on the record that they find. He's basically going, "What are you doing? You can't do this. You got to stop this." And even though those recordings, I think, were from 1923 or something like that, I've read somewhere that Lee Cronin says that could be Ash, because with all the time travel and all that, it's possible. He was back in 1923, and that happened. So hey, that's cool. I like that. There was this kind of famous thing, whatever, viral thing recently where an angry fan was drunk and saying, "Oh, this movie sucks," and Bruce Campbell yelled at him and told him to get out of there. And everyone cheered and everyone thought it was great. And I was like, yeah, good job, Bruce Campbell. But I don't know, after seeing this movie, I'm like, I kind of agree with that guy. That being said, apparently there's 3 volumes of the book now. The one from the original series, the one from the remake from 2013, and then this one. Okay, I guess. This one's the worst looking by far. They're planning on making a new film every like 2 or 3 years from what I read, and they probably will, because this movie had like a $19 million budget, made $40 million so far, so it's already profitable, and I'm sure it'll continue to make more money. Rotten Tomatoes on this is great too. The audience, the critics said 83% when I looked, audience said 80%, so it seems that I'm in the minority here, and most people disagree with me. Most people like this more, but I don't know. I think in some ways I feel like I've come to appreciate the 2013 remake. At the time, I didn't like it as much because it wasn't like Evil Dead, but now I appreciate it for just how far it went. With this movie, I feel like they were kind of trying to find a balance of in between, where like they had the gore and the bloodiness from that movie, but also a little bit more of the humor from the original series. But yeah, I don't know. For whatever reason, it didn't work for me. Now, maybe I was just having a bad day. Maybe I was tired. I did have a drink during the showing, so I would think that would make me more amenable to it. But I don't know. But if you saw the movie, oh, so as far as my score though, I'm, yeah, I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10. I walked away unsatisfied. I thought about changing it and softening my score a little bit, but yeah, I don't know. This movie just didn't really work for me that much. I didn't really like it. So I don't know. Maybe I'll like the next one better. But yeah. So if you saw the movie, then let me know what you thought of it down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great night. I'll see you here again next week.